All right, folks. So now we've heard from a number of community members, farmers, and experts today about the damage that factory farms have done to our great state. Our judges, I think, have been hard at work throughout the presentation, jotting down some notes, and I would like to give them an opportunity to deliver their thoughts on the matter and maybe even a verdict. So first, I'd like to ask Senator Claire Celsi to speak for a few minutes on what we've heard today. Senator?
Thanks. I'm going to stand up just because I'm getting crampy sitting down for so long. Anyway, thank you all to all the speakers for your insightful and thought-provoking presentations. I learned several new things today. And yeah, that's one of the points I want to make. All the collective knowledge in this room far surpasses anything that I could ever learn in a lifetime, let alone a few years in the legislature. So I want to just say how insignificant I am just as a person in that place, compared to the collective knowledge that you all have. And it's pretty awe-inspiring. So I want to thank you for that. The phenomena that's most controls where I work at the legislature is what really is happening in our country, and that's the divided conversations that we have. For the most part, Republicans listen to Republicans and Fox News and their groups that they get information from, and for the most part, Democrats do the same. So I'm not saying we're any better, but there is one thing that we are better at, and that is we still keep trying to listen and learn the facts, most of us anyway. There's few exceptions. So the thing that I take away from this, and I'm giving you my perspective as a legislator. These folks will have, I'm sure, far more insightful things to say, but they listen to a few groups. So moving forward, I really wish the strategy would target these groups a little bit more, because that's who they listen to. That's who they get their information from. The Farm Bureau. Okay, that's the king. The family leader. Bob and Company. Iowa ABI. And the Chamber Alliance. Those are the big ones. There's lots of little lobbying groups up there, but those are the big ones that they listen to and get their information from. And I want to tell you just a teeny little story to illustrate how these divided conversations happen, even in the legislature. During the COVID pandemic, Kim Reynolds came out of the gate actually listening to some of her advisors. Do you remember that? When she first talked some sense the first few weeks? And then she went to Washington, D.C. and started talking to Trump and his ilk. And she came back a changed woman. That trip really changed her. After that, before she left, we were having joint phone calls with Dr. Padati, with Republicans and Democrats, all on the same call, listening to each other and listening to each other's questions and hearing the same answers from public health experts. A couple weeks later, guess what happened? We had separate phone calls. We didn't even get to be on the same Zoom call or same phone call with our colleagues anymore. So just know that when you say to, especially a Democrat, well, you guys work together, work it out. Walk across the aisle and talk to your colleagues. That is simply not the way it works. So you have to get to them where they live, where they worship, where they get their information. So as much as you can get to them at home, the better. Because I can't get to them because the only people they listen to are those groups that I mentioned. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective, and I think it's changed. I truly think it's changed over the years. There used to be more collegial interactions. There used to be more dialogue. There used to be more information gathering. Simply doesn't happen that way anymore. So it's super frustrating, but I'm not here to whine about my job. I'm here to listen to you, but I wanted to let you know what that perspective is, straight from someone who works there. So again, thank you for everything. Thank you all for being here on such a beautiful day. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
This is just a formality. I was going to hand the mic to you, but second off, Dr. Silvia Secchi, please present your verdict and remarks.
Well, I want to start reiterating my thanks for you guys being here. Those of you who follow my work and my scientific communication and public engagement efforts, it gets really, really lonely to do what I do. There's not that many people actually, I guess I brought my husband with me because I'm afraid of coming to Ames by myself, just in case I get, the Cults crowd is powerful in this place. So I really appreciate that you are here, and more broadly, I appreciate that this perspective is what is needed to reframe the narrative. The narrative of America needs a farmer needs to include the fact that CAFO operators are not farmers. That's not who a farmer is, and that is not what a farmer does. And so I appreciate listening to all the perspectives of the voices that we've heard today about the extent of the damages that this land and this water and the people that live here are suffering. We heard about the impact of this system on climate change. And by the way, do not listen to any of the greenwashing that's coming out of task forces that say that we're going to capture methane from these facilities and that's going to solve climate change. Don't listen to those who say we can just do technological fixes at the end of the pipe and that's going to solve the structural injustices and environmental problems that this fundamentally unbalanced and unjust system is creating. There are no fixes at the margin, and be enraged that people with scientific credentials for 30 pieces of silver are selling their scientific credibility and telling you that that's going to solve the problem. We can't kick this can down the road like we've been doing for decades, and that's why we are where we are. We're not producing the science that we need to solve the problem. We're producing the science that enables the greenwashing of the problem. And I am ashamed of being an Iowa State graduate because of these actions. From climate change to infectious diseases, antibiotic resistance, nitrates in drinking water, with mounting evidence, by the way, that our standards in drinking water are too high, and we're having chronic issues and cancer associated with those lower levels that many in Iowa are subject to because we can barely treat to the current standards. Animal welfare issues, and it goes all the way to our diet. We've heard testimonies about all these structural problems. So I am thankful that you came here and you spoke up against the false narrative that is paid for, right, by interest groups who are happy with the status quo. It is really terrible for most of us who live in Iowa, people who live downstream from us, and the people that actually have to eat this crappy food that we produce and that we should be ashamed of, okay? So my verdict is that we should have a moratorium, but that a moratorium should be the first step towards addressing historical structural problems and injustices that many of you have brought to the fore today, and create a food system that feeds people without destroying the environment and those who work within it, whether it physically destroys them or frankly destroys their soul, because CAFO operators are not farmers, and nobody should do that kind of job and produce this kind of livestock. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Secchi. And finally, we have Dr. Francis Thicke. What are your thoughts on the situation?
Well, I don't know if I can follow that one.
It's really hard. Sorry.
Well, we've seen here today very clearly that rural Iowans are suffering from air quality problems from CAFOs, water quality problems, quality of life, property values plunging, even their health. This is a bad situation we've been aware of. We are all aware of it. The Iowa legislature has failed miserably in its duty to protect Iowans. It's really a shameful situation. And that excludes Claire over here. Because we know not all legislators, there are some that are working, but they have to get more help from other legislators. And this is what is called regulatory capture. When powerful interest groups can get legislators to create laws and regulations that favor them, they're small little people compared to all of the rest of us. But we know that money speaks loudly, but people speak loudly too. We heard Cherie Ortiz a little earlier here, didn't we? We can speak loudly. We need a lot of us to do that. And apparently we're not there yet. But I'm impressed. I looked in the back here, there's about 27 organizations. That is very impressive. But it's not enough, unfortunately. And Claire made some good suggestions for all the activists out there of organizations to target, to bring them along. That's very important. Sure. And absolutely, we need a moratorium. But I have actually here too, Silvia. That's the first step. But I look at it from a little different perspective about that. We've seen today we have monopolization of markets. And so the independent farmer has been forced out. And so cheap grain makes CAFOs. And this all comes into the bigger picture. On the international level, we have these multinational corporations that run the WTO, the World Trade Organization. And the World Trade Organization has power over sovereign countries. Sovereign countries, they tell sovereign countries how to make their laws in order to make things like cheap grain so that we can have CAFOs all over the world. And so it's a huge problem. And Patrick's telling us about the move to amend. That's a great first step. We have this big problem. Yes, we need a moratorium now, but that we need to put that in the big picture, and we need to keep on trucking after that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thicke, and thank you to all of our judges. I would say the verdict is pretty clear. It sounds like we need a factory farm moratorium, right? But